Welcome to the 14th episode of Reinventing Racehorses, the podcast that focuses on the standardbred breed, both off and on the racetrack. This week, it's just Kimberly and myself, Jasmine, in the studio. We have a couple different topics to speak about. First off, though, let's start off with Kim. How's your week been?
So my week's been, well, a little bit interesting. I thought I took a really bad acid trip this week because on Monday I had a surprise visitor at the farm. Two goats just randomly showed up walking up the driveway, which, I mean, having random horses, cows, dogs, cats, those things are kind of normal for walking up a farm driveway. A goat doesn't just walk up your driveway. They don't. Anybody that owns goats knows that. And so it was a little interesting. So we wrangled them, got them locked up in a stall, posted them on social media to try to find their owner. And I was still working, just working from home. So I went back to the house to do some more work. And within an hour, well, it was about an hour, I decided to go back out to the barn to check on them and bring them some more grass. And at this point, I had had a lot of people tell me that this wasn't the first collection of goats that were found on the road in the last couple weeks. Guessing somebody abandoned them or decided they didn't want them. We don't really know. And the goats had disappeared. They had gotten out of the pen somehow, and I don't know how, because nothing was disturbed, and they should have disturbed something if they had tried to hop out or climb under something or anything. They kind of just levitated out of the barn and disappeared. And because the barn can't be seen from the house, we figure maybe somebody came in and picked them up and went away, and they didn't want anybody to know that they had got them. Didn't think anything of it. So 24 hours later, the goats are back. However, unfortunately, the dog scared them off because we didn't realize that they were there, and he saw them first. So tomorrow, it is goat wrangling day. And I'm going to be taking a couple friends. Jasmine, I hear you're hopefully joining us. And walking up and down the road and trying to find somebody else's goats. I know somebody that's willing to take them, either permanently or temporarily until their owner comes about. But yeah, so I don't really know how else to explain my week, except for the fact that goats just disappeared and apparently can levitate. Or anamorph. Maybe they turned into a bird and flew out of the barn. I don't know. But it's been a weird week. At least I know I'm not crazy. The goats are back. I didn't dream the whole thing. I took pictures and video of them. One of them even bit my finger. Like, I know they were real. And I'm glad to know that they're back, so it wasn't just a bad drug trip that I took. How about your week, Jasmine? How's it going?
Well, nowhere near as interesting as acid trips and levitating goats. I will tell you that much. I spent some time out at the cottage, spent lots of time in the lake, avoided a sunburn this week, which, that's always a good thing.
That's a shocker.
And then I was roped into goat wrangling by some weirdo that you may actually know, Kim.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who that person is. This week, we wanted to be able to discuss something that is very common in racehorses, actually very common in high athletic horses in general, and that is gastric ulcers. So gastric ulcers are very frequently found in horses that perform athletic activities like racehorses. So you typically see them in up to 80 to 90% of racehorses. And now that's not a bad thing because a lot of racehorse people treat them because they know that they exist. Horses are built to graze and eat frequently small portions over extended periods of time. When you have an extremely athletic horse like a racehorse, they eat a lot, but not consistently in a day. When you have a horse in a natural grazing situation that gets a steady flow of acid for their digestion, their stomach is working normally. But even when a horse isn't eating, their body is still producing acidic fluid. When there isn't roughage going into their system, that acid is just building up. Other risk factors for developing gastric ulcers in horses is physical and environmental stress. Anything like stalled confinement or transport stress, it shows that it can induce gastric ulceration in horses, even those that haven't had issues with ulcers before.
Yes, exactly that, which is why you see it more often in racing and show type horses, because they do have less access to pasture and they do have more stressful lifestyles usually.
One other thing that people may not even realize can cause gastric ulcers is chronic administration of some anti-inflammatory drugs, such as phenylbutazone, ketoprophene. All of that can decrease the production of a stomach's protective mucus layer, which makes them more susceptible to ulcers. So if you got a horse that's sitting on bute every day, you really got to watch for ulcers.
I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the symptoms that come with ulcers. I think that it would be very important for anyone who's going to have a horse that's off the track to know what to watch for. What do you think, Kim?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that, especially when we're adopting out horses coming right out of a racing career, I am adamant that I make sure owners realize this is a real possibility. And it has nothing to do with any lack of care given to them by their racing families. This is just a natural reaction to an environment.
So some of the things that you're going to notice most blindingly are going to be things like weight loss all of a sudden, and there's no real explanation that you can see from the outside. They could be irritable. They could be resistant to working under saddle for you. They might not like having you touch them around their flanks and their gut. They might be pinning their ears or kicking or acting like they're in pain or discomfort. Lack of energy, lack of stamina. They could have loss of appetite. And they may even come up low-grade anemic.
You're going to see them shut down. If you have a horse that comes in and they've got some life in there, this is going to look like a horse that is completely shut down. Their stool is not solid. They're loose stool all the time. They're not wanting to eat. They're standing around. They're maybe laying down a lot. It almost seems like colic, and it could even turn into a low-grade colic. Something that's a little more severe is you might even hear them grinding their teeth a lot. And I've seen this in some racehorses. They'll grind their teeth. It's almost like an irritation. And to look at a horse, just looking at their body and just stepping back and taking a look at them, if you see a horse that is really tucked up in the back half of their stomach, it's really tight, they're definitely flinchy, they don't want you to touch it, and they're irritated, like Jasmine said, that is A1 classic sign of ulcers. And they may not be severe ulcers, but if you don't treat them and you continue to feed feeds that aren't going to work with their acidic levels, you're actually going to make it worse without even meaning to. And I've seen it happen. Well-meaning people that just don't realize their horse is battling a small issue with ulcers can suddenly turn into a big issue in the blink of an eye, because you think, oh, they're a little bit of a hard keeper, we'll just up their feed, when actually you're irritating the acid.
Precisely. So on that note, how are you going to go about treating ulcers? The first thing you want to do is cut their exercise. You want to limit the amount of stress that you're putting their system under. You want to be feeding them a high roughage diet, something with lots of grasses, something that is going to help diminish that acid in their system as much as possible.
And something that's really going to stimulate their saliva production. In horses, saliva is the best antacid out there for them. And one that I really preach is put your horse on 24/7 pasture. And even though they're on 24/7 pasture, give them hay. Give them all of the option to chew and make that saliva happen.
Exactly. That is exactly what we're talking about. If you notice that your horse is really in a lot of pain, is really irritated, get that vet out. If you want to know 100%, get that vet out and get your horse scoped, because it's peace of mind for yourself and it's for your horse.
One thing that I never like to see people do with horses that have ulcers is stick them in a stall. It's the worst thing that you can do with them, because you're not going to be able to keep them chewing 24/7. You're not going to be able to keep them happy, because especially if they're a horse that's used to being outside a lot, they're going to start to stress. And stress is, the minute you put stress on a horse, you're not helping your situation whatsoever. So like Jasmine said, you cut the exercise, you turn them out, you give them hay, all the hay that they can eat, you make sure that they're on a good pasture with lots of grass. One thing that you want to try to do is separate that horse from a larger field and put them out with just one horse. You don't want to give them where they're having to fight for forage. Split them up, but give them a friend. Obviously, these are herd animals, but it gives them the opportunity to eat without being chased off, or without the other horses being silly and goofy and acting and making your horse that's currently battling ulcers run and do silly things when they really need to be resting. And another thing you don't want to do, like I said, things like bute, anti-inflammatories actually make it worse. So if your horse is battling ulcers and they're in pain, it may seem like a good idea to give them something like bute for the pain. You're not helping your situation. It's going against your instincts of trying to relieve the pain, but don't do it.
Like Kim mentioned, their saliva is the absolute best antacid that your horse can have access to. So even if you really want to give them something for the pain, they're already producing it themselves. As humans, we want to fix things. We want to help. We want to do everything in our power to make our horses feel better. And I understand it's a hard thing to put down the medication and let nature do its thing, but really sometimes it's the very best thing we can do for our animals. So now that we have touched on causes, symptoms, and treatment, let's circle around to prevention. What can we do to help our healthy horses hopefully not develop ulcers? So some of this we've already touched on as treatments, and it's just things that it's going to be an ongoing thing. So things like providing lots of turnout, making sure that they have one or two buddies, but not enough to cause a stressful herd environment. You want to feed lots of hay. Alfalfa in particular has been shown to help buffer stomach acids. Reduce those grain-based meals. You want to use hay nets or slow feeders to really slow down the eating and make them chew. It's best to remember that these are all things that are obviously going to work far better for your personal horses, your show horses, your riding horses than for your racing horses. Kim, as someone who's a bit more of an expert on race horses and their daily lives than I am, why don't you go over a little bit of that for us?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, a lot of racing trainers treat their horses with ulcers because it's not that their horses are in a bad situation. It's just that athletic lifestyle leads to ulcers. You can't turn an athletic horse out in a field 24/7 and only feed it hay and expect it to be athletic. It's just, I mean, look at your pasture horses. They wouldn't go out and race. It's not going to happen. They have to lead an athletic lifestyle. And unfortunately, this is just a natural side effect of that. So oftentimes your horses coming off the track, a lot of these horses are being treated for ulcers regularly. And that's not to say that this is a life treatment they need. This is only in their racing lifestyles. Once they retire and they're over it, they're probably not going to need it again. However, if you're getting a horse coming out of a racing career, the first thing that I always say to people is treat for ulcers. It doesn't matter whether they're showing signs or not. You're not going to harm your horse by being proactive. You don't want to be reactive when your horse has lost 300 pounds in a week and you don't know why, because just the fact that your horse is going from a racing atmosphere to a retirement lifestyle is enough of an environmental stress change for them to cause ulcers, even if they don't currently have them. So you want to be very proactive in your approach. And even if you're adopting a horse that's already retired, anytime you're moving a horse from one location to another, especially if it's also changing handlers and families, be proactive and treat your horse for ulcers, especially a horse that used to be a racehorse that may be a little bit more susceptible to them. Even if they don't end up having them, you've at least done yourself the due diligence of giving them the treatment. Kim's going on a rant again. I have to say, one thing that really bugs me, and I see this quite often in adoption, is when horses are moving locations or moving situations, and you tell people, just to be safe, check for this. You know, if you have your vet out, check for this. Anyway, da 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 da. And people go, well, they're eating, they're drinking, they're fine. We don't need to do that, because they don't want to spend the money, or they just don't believe that they need to. And that always bugs me, because we need to be proactive in how we take care of our animals rather than reactive when our horse is suddenly losing weight and we don't know why. Because when you're treating something like ulcers and you're coming from behind it and you're a step behind, it takes a lot. It's very easy for horses to lose weight. It is very hard for them to gain weight. And all it takes is a week of getting behind ulcers, and you're going to be a few months getting back the horse that you were expected to have. And so it doesn't have to be the expensive treatments. If you really think that your horse doesn't really need ulcer treatments, but you want to be on the safe side and be proactive, you can go to your grocery store and pick up some Indian yogurt. And I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I believe it's called kefir, Kefir. And I learned this trick from a racing person who gives this to their horses every day, and they've never really had a horse with major ulcer issues. You just give them a syringe of it every day in their feed or directly in their mouth if you feel like it. And yogurt, naturally, the bacteria helps with the acid. And I've used this treatment since on a plethora of horses, or I've given the advice to somebody and said, hey, try this. And they've tried it and it works. And those bottles are like $7, and you get probably 2 weeks out of a jug. Get 2 jugs, do 30 days. And you know if you need to step it up and go with a veterinary treatment, or if your horse is fine. But you've spent $14 instead of a couple hundred, but you've been proactive. It's not hard to do. It's not a tough thing. And I wish that more people would be proactive in the treatment of their horses. And I probably sound crazy for preaching that, but I do. And it's something that I believe in, and it's something that I wish more people would just be willing to think about. And I know it's not something that a lot of people maybe even understand or realize that these horses are susceptible to something like this, even if they've been off the racetrack for years. But is it really that big of a deal? Is it really that hard to get them some kind of treatment? Especially if you look up ones that you can find to do from home, like home treatments, home remedies. It's not. I don't think it's that hard. Another treatment that a lot of people use, kind of over-the-counter treatment, is aloe vera juice. Because it contains so much digestible fiber, it allows the opportunity to soothe and protect your horse's digestive tract, but it also regulates bacteria, which can give your horse a relief from ulcers. However, the one thing that I do find with the aloe vera juice is that it has such a strong taste, so your horse might not be as willing to take it as you want. Where with the yogurt, because there's different flavors like strawberry or banana, so if your horse is into those flavors, they're going to be a lot more willing to gobble it up. So you can, with the aloe vera juice, pour a half a cup of it on your horse's feed, but it's also supposed to support a healthy attitude, which is nice. But again, some horses that are maybe sensitive to smells or tastes may not be as willing to take the aloe vera juice. So just look for other options.
Not at all. What is the old adage? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of treatment. Isn't that the way it goes, I think? One more thing that people may want to think about if they're going to be feeding their horse long term and dealing with ulcers is to feed some sort of digestive supplement. I realize that all of this may sound like ulcers are a big, bad, scary thing, but really it's not something that requires a lifelong treatment. Your horse is not going to be on medication for the rest of its life. If you know your horse is susceptible to ulcers, there are definitely things that you can do as far as feeding plans and environment management to reduce your horse's stress and avoid having any reoccurrence of gastric ulcers. One thing that is rather popular in that regard is to feed probiotics to your horses. The main goal of giving your horse probiotics is to manipulate the normal intestinal flora in such a way that it's beneficial to the health of the horse.
So, like Jasmine said, treating with probiotics and even prebiotics is such a proactive way to provide maintenance and management to your horse before they even show a possible gut issue. And this isn't just for ulcers. This is basically for any horse that may have a health or gut related issue or even some infection in their system. And even probiotics are good for horses that are affected by laminitis. It's an overall health assistance. And one of my favorite products and brands, and I've seen it work, is the Herbs for Horses brand, and specifically their ProBio Plus supplement. So I'm going to read some of the information on this, and you can go to their website, horseherbs.com, and see all of the amazing products that they have. And this is just one of many. So the point of their ProBio Plus is that it's been developed to improve digestion and promote a healthy gut. It's beneficial to all horses and contains one type of live yeast to improve fiber digestion, 2 types of prebiotics to support beneficial bacterial colonization of the gut, 3 digestive enzymes to break down starch, fiber, and all of the byproducts that they get when they're eating their feed. This helps to liberate more nutrition from complex carbs that's also in their feed. It also includes 4 bacterial cultures that beneficially modify the gastric environment and reduces the incidence of colic and acidosis. It also has flax, which helps to control inflammation, and fenugreek to aid in insulin recognition of sugar and its elimination. The main benefits of ProBio Plus is to help prevent ulcers, improve digestion, gives more energy for competition senior or underweight horses, or horses that have suffered from laminitis, are getting over a surgery, etc. It's a small daily dose, so it's very economical. There's no fillers, there's no sugars. You give them You give 2 scoops a day for 10 days, followed by 1 scoop a day for maintenance. And included in your container is the scoop, and it's not very big. So, depending on the size of bucket that you buy, their 78-day supply is only $50. That's less than $1 a day to provide maintenance to your horse and give them a healthy gut opportunity. That's not that expensive, in my opinion. I think it's worth it. Now, I know that Herbs for Horses isn't the only brand that we've used. It isn't the only brand that we've seen success with. And I know, Jasmine, you have another product that you want to promote, which, by the way, free advertising. We're not sponsored by any of these companies. We just really like their products for our horses, for horses that we've adopted out, for our friends' horses. I just love seeing products work, and it doesn't matter the brand. There's so many amazing brands out there, and they're always coming up with new things. So, Jasmine, what do you like?
I really like the Omega Alpha brand. I've used several of their products on my own animals, as well as having spoken with friends and acquaintances who have used them successfully. In particular, for this instance, their Gastra FX. I've used that. I was moving my own horses across the country, and with the Gastric effects, I didn't have any issues of ulcers popping up, and both of them are off the track racehorses. So I really like that they have some natural ingredients to help. Things like marshmallow root, slippery elm, licorice root, and ginger root. They're all naturally occurring ways to help with gut health. It also has a fairly small dosage. You give 1 ounce twice a day. And so that's that's $47.65 according to their website for 32 ounces, which is throwing you it's definitely a little bit more expensive than the Herbs for Horses, but I just wanted to put a shout out in there for a brand that I've had success with.
And the difference between the Herbs for Horses and the Omega Alpha is that Omega Alpha is a liquid. Liquids do tend to work just a little bit better because you can usually really make sure that your horse actually gets that liquid in their system, where with a powdered supplement like the Herbs for Horses, sometimes they might not eat it. They might leave it. It's small, it's dusty. They might not get it in their system. It might fall out. So I'm always partial to a liquid. So I do love the Omega Alpha products for that reason, because at least I know my horse is getting it. Herbs for Horses does offer a lot of liquid products the same way that Omega Alpha also offers powdered products. They're not just one or the other. And there's so many other amazing brands out there that I know a lot of people have used and had success with. So it's all just in your personal preference. On that note, I know that Jasmine is giving me the evil, you need to stop ranting eyeball. I do it a lot. I'm very sorry. This is something that is very close to me. I have seen a lot of horses struggle because of this issue, even though they're owned by very well-meaning and extremely caring people. Once you get behind something gut-related, it is very hard to get ahead of it. And so I really wanted to bring that to our podcast, and I really wanted to get it out there and make people think. And hopefully you listen to this and you go and pick up some yogurt for the next time you're taking your horse to a show. I know none of us are really going anywhere right now because of COVID, but things are starting to open up, so you know what I mean. Ask your vet about ulcers. Get them to do a check. It's not if you're unsure, if you have a horse that's struggling with weight issues and you're really not sure why, when you have your vet out to do your yearly shots, just get them to do a check. At least you know. And if nothing else, go to the store, buy some yogurt, stick it down their throat for a few days, see what happens. You can't hurt them. It's a natural product. However, we're going to wrap that up this week. I hope that you've maybe learned something. Maybe you sit back and it opens your eyes a little bit. Or maybe you go, you're a crazy lady and you need to get off your high horse. That's okay too. We hope you have a good week. I've had a really interesting week. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Reinventing Racehorses. Thank you, Jasmine, for sitting through another one of my rants. And we hope that you join us next week. We'll see what we come up with.